thing that's most interesting about this play is the character Esther and what her job is. Right from the get-go, you can see that she's a conservative Christian woman with those ideals, but somehow she's working at a boarding house, making sexual clothing for women at the boarding house and women all over the place. And right from the get-go, you can see that something's a little off, and maybe she's forced to do this, and this is not a choice of her. Which kind of leads into the idea of exploitation you see throughout the entire play. Even with Van Buren and Esther, she tries to kiss her. She says, I want to go see a colored play, but oh no, you can't see one of my plays. It'd be too scandalous. In the sense that Van Buren doesn't really see her as an equal, but more of like an exotic, maybe even pet almost. And then the other idea of dreams throughout the play, of maybe being unattainable American dreams for different groups of people. All the women in the play, Mame and Esther, were unable to achieve their dreams, and that may be due to society's restrictions on them. Mame wanted to go play in Europe, but she had no chance. And Esther wants a beautiful parlor that services only black women, but during this time, in the early 1900s, it just never happen for them. And that's the idea of maybe the American dream isn't true, and it's certainly not attainable for everyone. You have to have a kind of good sort of background that lets you attain those things. And then while I was reading the play, a big idea is like the smoke jacket, which I had no idea what that was while reading. But I looked it up, and it's what men wear over their tuxedos when they want to go smoke after a party or something, which I really thought was interesting because it does seem like throughout the entire play, it's constantly women serving men. The corsets that Van Buren has to wear, she wears it because she's trying to please her man, and he does not pay her any attention and spits at her when she says she is having her period. So it just goes to show that during this time, it seemed like society was geared just to service men. I mean, even Mrs. Dixon told Esther that during her marriage, she'd have to focus everything on serving her man and pleasing her man. And she did mention that don't let her man hit her, but even then, it just seems ridiculous that throughout the whole thing, it's women serving men to make men happy. And as far as the sort of thing that we were talking about with the 3 R's, this certainly reinforces what the African American experience is like, due to the idea that there are no proper opportunities afforded to them throughout the real world. Whereas George could not find a job because he was saying that they were hiring old European men, and Esther can't start her company, and all this sort of things, that they lack opportunities, and because of that, they're forced to turn on each other, where George starts taking advantage of Esther, and Mame, in a way, kind of takes advantage of Esther as well. That it's a sense of, because they have no other option, they turn into themselves and are punished for it. And yes, there is still racism and discrimination today. You can see with Black Lives Matter. Ohio State, 5% African American, but I think it's 14% of the state's population. So you can see that the only way to solve that is to give future generations the opportunity of education and learning and stuff. And to see people in power as similar to them so they can aspire to that. So President Obama would just be a great example of that. And then 2 questions I'd give are, what do you think happens to George at the end of the play? And does Esther ever get to open up her shop?